All right. And everybody's in?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to admit people.
Okay, great. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for your patience as we negotiated technical difficulties in the community garden. I'm Diana McCall, and you are in the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden with me. Welcome. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. But first, we're going to start with some Zoom etiquette. So please make sure that you are muted. And you will see down in the bottom of your Zoom window a little spot that says participant. And if you click on that, up will pop some icons, and on those icons is a blue hand. So if you've got a question, you can click on that blue icon, and Jay, who's helping out moderating, will let me know that you've got your hand raised, and then you can unmute yourself and ask me that question when I call on you. The other way you can ask a question, because I really want this to be a conversation, and that by the end of this hour you have all of your winter gardening questions asked. You can also just type your question in the chat box. So you click on chat box and then just type away, and then Jay can just interrupt me at a breaking point, any point, and ask me that question, and we'll get those answered for you. Okay. So to continue, Dr. John Wilson Community Garden, you are here with me. This garden has been here since 2005. It's on Black Mountain Town property. And I've been working, or no, the garden's been here since 2004, and I started volunteering here in 2005, and the town started employing me to help Dr. Wilson with his amazing vision to educate people how to grow food, to grow enough to share, and to give people a place to do all of that. Since 2005, I've been working down here and employed by the town of Black Mountain since 2006. And we've slowly grown this program. So behind me, what you see here is food that is grown exclusively for donation to Bounty and Soul. If you haven't heard about them, look them up on the internet. They're an amazing nonprofit in our community that gets food, fresh produce, and education to the public. And the other part of our garden over here is renting. So we've got over 100 community members renting plots and growing food for themselves. And the first 5 feet of everyone's plot is grown on for donation. It's called our 10% program. And then we've also got land on this park out here that we grow fruit and nut trees that we also harvest for Bounty and Soul. And that's open to the community to walk, bike, play disc golf. So it's a really special place. We good so far? Any questions? Okay. All right. So my hope is that by the end of this hour, that you'll have an understanding of what kind of crops you can be planting in the wintertime. Ideally, if you're taking this class, you've probably already got some stuff in the ground and you're wondering, how do I take care of it? And so by the end of this time, you'll know how to take care of it, you'll know how to keep it covered, and you'll know how to have fresh produce through the winter. So a lot of the food that we have out here right now, we'll actually be harvesting all the way through until next March when we're ready to start planting our spring crops. So at some point, you'll get to be such an amazing gardener that you will have vegetables in the ground year round here in Western North Carolina. So let's just take a walk through the garden and see what kind of vegetables are growing right now. Mm-hmm. So you can see that we've already got a lot of vegetables covered because it's going to get cold tonight. It's going to be about 36 degrees. And we're going to show you how to cover these, how to do this yourself. But here we have interplanted, we've got collards interplanted with lettuce. So we do a lot of interplanting in, well, year round, honestly. But we will oftentimes plant a quicker growing crop like lettuce with a slower growing crop like collards. So we'll often take like collards or kale and we'll plant them in these 4-foot wide beds on a 3-2-3 pattern. So we'll plant them pretty closely. And then in the open spaces between, we might plant scallions, or we might plant lettuce, or we might plant radishes or turnips, like curry turnips, a small growing, quick growing turnip. And so we had a lot more lettuce in here. We've already harvested it. We harvested even 85 pounds today. We harvested 120 pounds last Thursday. We're harvesting so much food every week. And so that lettuce will be done and ready from the time we put it in the ground. About 4 to 8 weeks later, the collards are ready more like 8 to 12 weeks later. So we're maximizing the land in the bed to grow more food. And the collards are what are going to really last us until the spring. So the lettuce, we might start planting that end of August, and we might plant some every week or every 2 to 3 weeks, all the way through, and even into December sometimes. If I have the starts available, I'll be putting lettuce in the ground. And then we're harvesting that as it comes ready. The collards, we can start harvesting these collards now, and their growth will get slower and slower and slower until they pretty much just stop growing around winter solstice. And then they're just hanging out here, and we're just making sure the soil's staying moist, and we're keeping the beds covered. And then they'll start growing again around February 2nd, which is also known as Imbolc, or sometimes the first day of spring. And that's when we'll start to be able to harvest them again. So in the wintertime, for a home grower, you want to plant 2 to 3 times as much as you can actually eat, because the growth slows down so much that you're going to harvest some 1 month, and then some the next month, and some the third month, and then it'll start growing again. So you're when you're winter gardening, it's a lot like you're just kind of having an outdoor refrigerator to store your food while it's still alive. So let's look at a few other vegetables that we've got out here, so you can kind of get a sense what all is possible. We've got examples here of lettuce and some pak choi. In this bed behind, we've got straw that is covered garlic. Best time to plant garlic is actually in late October, early November here in West North Carolina, and we'll harvest this the last weekend in June generally. So you're going to get the best bulbs of garlic in the wintertime. Because if you think about it, bulbs are a root crop, and in the wintertime, the earth is drawing all of its energy into the earth. Someone is not muted, so if you can help me out by muting so I don't have that noise in the background, that'd be great. So just make sure that you are definitely muted in the background. Thanks. So yeah, so garlic is a great one. You want to put your bulbs in the ground. Basically, you're at the tail end of when you can do that is right now. The other thing that's great to plant in the wintertime is cover crops. So we've got Austrian winter peas here in this bed germinating, and they're going to feed the soil all winter long. And they're also going to provide us with something to eat. So we'll be able to actually eat the tops of that. You can make really yummy salad, pesto, all kinds of delicious stuff with the tops, and all the while they're feeding your soil with good nitrogen. We've also, you can see here, same thing. We've got interplanted kale and lettuce in this bed. You see how we've got the lettuce planted on the edges and kale planted in the middle. And this is a great opportunity too to talk about microclimates. So our beds here run east to west. And so this is north and that's south. Every 15 degrees of slope, so even in a bed like this, has got a little bit of slope to the south on this front edge here, actually is like the plant is growing quite a few degrees of latitude further south. It's pretty powerful. And if you use that to your advantage, you can get crops later and later into the season. So for example, in the wintertime, I will often harvest from the north side first and get those out of here, so that one, I can put the hoops in and the remay, and they're not touching the plants. And then I'll leave the south side for later because it's going to grow and stay longer in the bed. Same thing in the summertime in reverse. I'm going to harvest from the south side first because one, it's growing so much faster, and it's going to bolt, or it's going to dry out, or it's not going to keep as well. And on the north side, I can often get lettuce to grow for quite a bit longer because it's shaded and cooler. So we've also got over here what looks like just some grass is actually more cover crop. We've got a mix here of clover and rye, hairy vetch, and more of those Austrian winter peas. And then over here in these beds, we've got onions. So again, a really great root vegetable that is we actually don't need to cover the onions or the garlic like we're going to cover the other vegetables, they can just be covered with straw, and they will keep through the winter and grow very, very slowly all through the winter, and then they'll really kick it come, you know, mid-February and into March. And then again, we'll be harvesting those onions like, you know, May to June. Okay. So I'll take a pause there. We just did kind of a walkthrough of some, and just seeing some of the vegetables. We've also got fennel out here. We've got cabbage. We've got 3 or 4 different kinds of kale. We've got arugula, tatsoi. I think I mentioned fennel, chard, lots and lots of vegetables. So you can grow so much. You can also grow beets and carrots. So these are all things, it's too late to get most of these things in the ground now. But if you start planting end of August every month, these crops, then you'll have them all through the winter. So today is really about sort of educating about what's possible and then how to take care of it. So I'll take a pause there and check and see, are there any questions?
There is a blue hand.
Yeah, thanks so much, Diana. Looks like we have a question from Russ Spiller. Russ, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
They're like audio to be heard. Like if they don't want their video to be shown, then they'll need to like.
Oh, okay, okay, great.
Video, yeah.
So Issa's letting me know, since we're recording, if you would prefer your face to not be seen on the recording, now that I'm giving you an option to speak, if you don't, you can turn off your video if you don't want to be seen. So just, you know, permission option right here. So for the person who raised their hand, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask your question. If you don't want to be recorded, just turn off your video. Otherwise, please go ahead and ask your question.
So being a gardener on the regular rented plots, my plot runs an opposite direction to what you just described. So can you describe, is there a microclimate advantage for people who have plots that run the other direction?
Yes, yeah. So for plots that are running north-south, your microclimates are going to run more east and west. And so there's 2 things going on here. One is that your western side is always going to be your warmer side, like our south side is our warmer side. However, the other trick here, though, is that the wind comes out of the north and the west. So honestly, what you really want to do is make sure that your western side is really, really tucked in tight, and that the remate isn't going to rip up. And we're going to show that here in a moment. But you don't get to maximize as much of those microclimates in the winter with an east-west bed. You definitely can in the summer, but with an east-west bed, you're still going to get you know, that warmth on the western side. But if I were you, I would generally make sure that your west side is anchored permanently all winter long, because you don't want it to fly up and expose your plants to all the wind, because that's, you know, we have wind pulling through here from the north and the west. So does that help answer that question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, great. Any other questions? Okay.
I don't see any other raised hands. But if we could, Sue McLeod, if you could hear me and you're able to mute your microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
So Sue, just make sure that your microphone's muted. And the way that you do that, you'll see, I'm not sure how it looks on a phone.
It looks like
I know you said you
she
were
got it. She got it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sue. All right, so let's go ahead and head over back to where we started. I'm going to walk you through the materials that you need. It sounds like some of you are Dr. John Wilson community gardeners, so you have already kind of seen what you need, but we're going to walk through that for anyone who's maybe not from the garden and is not familiar, and talk about that process. And then we'll actually show you how to build one of these, okay? So we'll head back over here. All right. So materials. First thing is that you need, and you can get this from Home Depot or Lowe's in packs of 10, 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch, it's up to you. I use 1/2 inch. EMT. E as in elephant, M as in mom, T as in tech. EMT pipe. And this comes straight, so it comes in 10-foot sections. So if you don't have a truck or a minivan, you're going to need to make friends with someone who does, because it's 10 feet. So you buy, and it comes in packs of 10, and I think they run like $1.20 or something each. And so then, if you are local, you can come to the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden, and we've got a hoop bender. And you will feel like Superman when you bend them, because it's pretty cool. You're bending metal, but it's really pretty effortless. It's really easy. And so, yeah, you just book an appointment with me, and we'll get you set up. You want to bring a partner, though, because it's a 2-person job, and I will teach you, but I'm not going to stick around to bend all of them with you. So it just takes like 1 minute to bend each one once you learn how. All right. And so our beds are 4 feet wide. And so there's a specific way to bend the hoops so that they have a diameter of 4 feet. The community garden beds are 6 feet wide. So there's a slightly different way of bending them to get the diameter correct for a 6 foot wide bed. And you don't want to interchange them. And if you happen to be, doing a bed that's 3 feet wide, we have a hoop bender for that. Like there's a slightly different hoop bender for that and a different way of bending it. So anything's possible depending on the width and the size of your bed. And if you aren't local, you can go to lostcreek.net, LOST creek.net. And that website has all the materials and information for how to buy the hoop benders and how to build the systems and everything you need to know. Great website. Okay, so that's material number 1. Next, we have snap clamps. You have to make sure that you get the right diameter. So this is for 1/2-inch EMT. If you happen to buy 3/4-inch EMT, then you want to make sure that you're purchasing snap clamps for 3/4-inch EMT. The prices on this product vary widely. So you can buy these in packs of 10 from Johnny's and spend, $6 to $10 a bag. Or you can buy like 100 of these and spend like a penny or two, like the price drops dramatically the more you buy. So if you're a local, you might want to, see who else is on this call and make friends and go in on a bulk purchase together, because it'll save you, quite a bit of money. And yeah, so that's that. And I generally buy these online. So I'll buy them in bulk, buy either, the 30, the 60, 100, whatever you want. Okay. Next, we've got rope. Super important if you are at the community garden. So because it's windy here. If you happen to have a sheltered, protected home site where you're winter gardening, you can probably get away without the rope, but there is no way you can get through a winter at the community garden without this rope. So we'll show you how to put this on. And then we're getting there. Stakes. These also come from Home Depot. So the rope came from Home Depot. These stakes come from Home Depot. And if you keep these out of the sun, if you just use them in the wintertime, like we're on our, 4th, 5th year or more on these, they do eventually, like they get brittle and will snap or break. But for the most part, these will last you for years, and the rope will last for years. The snap clamps, I usually have quite a bit of loss every year because the cold does make them brittle and they will break from time to time. So that's the thing I have to replace the most from year to year. But a lot of everything I'm showing you, if you take good care of it, you'll have this investment for 5 to 10 or more years, okay? And then you are gonna wanna get Remay, REMAY, that's this spun polyester fabric, and you can get it in different weights. I recommend going with a heavier weight for winter. You're gonna lose some light. This is gonna have a reduction in light, because you can get summer weights too, because this stuff becomes useful year round, because you can use it in the summertime when you're transplanting to prevent transplant shock. So if it gets, if you've got like a couple of hot sunny days coming and you just put your peppers in the ground, it's great to give the plants like 72 hours of shade to make that transition. Or you can also use it if you've got really bad flea beetles. This stuff is great for kind of helping to keep the flea beetles away. But then in the wintertime, you want this, heavier weight. One, because it's not going to rip as easily the heavier it is. The downside, though, is that you're going to lose some light. you can, some of these will just reduce light by 10%. Some of them will reduce by 20 or 30%. And you're also looking at frost protection, like how, is it rated to like 20 degrees? Is it rated to 10, or is it only rated to 30 or whatever? So you look at those details when you're looking at it. And this is also something I buy online. If you're really thrifty and really savvy, in the springtime, you can do some research and find out like what farms in this mountain valley in West North Carolina grow year round, because inevitably some of our big farms use this stuff, and once it gets a rip in it, they have to replace it. And so they might be having like 300-foot long beds and you only need 10 feet. And so the rips that are in theirs that keep them from using it again are totally fine. You can get scraps out of that. So I've definitely done that before for the community garden. I've like gone to 10 Mile Farm is one, and just reclaimed, recycled. So that's an option too. And then finally, over here is our UV grade plastic. It's really important that you buy what's labeled as UV, ultraviolet light plastic. If you go to Home Depot and just buy their like 3 mil plastic that's used for, insulating under houses or basements or something, it won't last. It'll get brittle and break and snap in one season or maybe two if you're lucky. This stuff lasts for years. You're looking at 5 to 10 years depending on how well you take care of it. So, and then finally, one more product I usually use are these staples, landscape staples, and you can buy those pretty cheap from any landscape company, and you can use them year after year, even if they rust. And so that's another piece that we use. Okay, so you now have all the components for building a hoop tunnel. Any questions now?
I don't see any raised hands at the moment.
Okay.
I've been trying to put in the chat some of the materials you've named. We've got the snap clamps,
Fantastic.
Remay,
Great.
the EMT for forming hoops, and then the plastic sheeting. You said to get a UV resistant variety. What is that called?
Yeah, just UV grade plastic, greenhouse plastic. Like if you do a Google search for UV grade greenhouse plastic, and anyone who's a community gardener on this call, I sent out an email in September or October with a list of all of these materials that you need, with links even. So you can just find that email again and click on those links, because I sent out like, not exactly like the best option, but just after a quick search, like this is what you're looking for, like this is the general idea. And then you can do your own shopping and bargain hunting to get like the best price for the size you need and what you're looking for. Okay. Thanks for doing that, Jay. That's super helpful. And lostcreek.net is, again, if you aren't local and you can't come to the community garden and bend your hoops, or we're not already bending them for you, then you can buy your hoop benders from Lost Creek. Okay.
Somebody asked, you mentioned the thickness rating number for the Remay.
Yeah, and I have not found I'm sorry to say I don't have like a thickness rating that I consistently use. I'm still testing. Dr. Wilson, who founded the garden, I don't know where he sourced his Remay, so I'm sad to say, and I've not been able to find the same quality that he used years ago. Like this is a piece of Remay from like back in the day, and it's still going strong. And I have new Remay that like this whiter stuff, and it just rips. Like I barely get a season of use out of it. So it's been really, I'm still on the hunt for like Remay that holds up to our winter winds and these snap clamps and all of that. So I'm still on the hunt to figure out like what is that ideal weight. But I would say go thicker and colder to try to get something that's going to last longer. Mm-hmm. It's worth in my mind, the sacrifice that you have in reduced light can be overcome by just opening and closing your system more often, because you're going to gain a product that lasts a lot longer. Mm-hmm. Hands are cold. Thanks to Isa, who's behind the camera right now with his cold hands. Chilly out here. All right, so I have a fabulous volunteer and gardener who's been standing in the wings. Philippe is going to come help me build one of these, okay? So we're going to show you how to do it. So in the, so yeah, Felipe, if you'll just come stand over here. When you start to get temps at night that are below freezing, so like sometimes, you know, October 15th is our first frost date. If your plants are mature, like you don't have like new baby starts in the ground that you just, you know, brought out of the greenhouse, you know, the week before. If you've got plants that have been in the ground for about a month, you're going to be fine if they hit like one night of frost. These plants are totally frost tolerant. They can handle those drops in cold. But it's like when you start to have those consistent cold nights, that's when you want to have the remay. Or even sometimes here in Western North Carolina, we'll have like a really hard cold drop that'll just like blacken everything. It's those nights like that when it's like going to be super still, like there's no wind, no rain, and you see that the temperature is going to drop below freezing. You definitely want to cover, even if it's just for that one night. And so the remay and the plastic is as much about protecting the plants from wind, which really dries them out and desiccates the plants, as it is about protecting them from the temperature fluctuations from the cold. A lot of these plants can totally handle literally freezing. It is an amazing thing to watch, to like see these plants frozen solid and then watch as the sun hits them and literally watch the leaves just like spring upright from like laying on the ground to perfectly vertical and looking healthy and vibrant and beautiful. So don't worry if like you like uncover your bed one day this winter and you're like, oh no, everything's frozen. Like the remay and the plastic isn't necessarily going to keep them from freezing. It's just helping to insulate them from direct exposure to wind and to those extreme fluctuations in temperature. So it's like giving them more resilience, okay? So yeah, if you'll start pulling this across. So as I mentioned, yeah, you'll just go all the way down, Philippe, and keep pulling it across. As I mentioned, we have a north side, and so the north side in our system stays anchored all winter long. Like I never take off these snap clamps all winter. And in an ideal world, we might even take another load of wood chips down and actually place wood chips on the path on top to really just hold this in place all winter long and keep the wind from getting up underneath here and billowing out. Like that would be premium option to really like tuck this in for the winter, because we're never going to open from this north side the rest of the winter. And I plant very intentionally. So we don't plant, basically when we start doing our winter planting, even like in September, I don't plant this foot over here. I start planting a foot from the north edge because I know I'm never going to access this all winter. Okay. And so then on the in the same way that we have them anchored on this side, we're going to go down and we are going to, so optional is an apron. Super helpful in the winter to have these, especially if you're doing a lot. If you just got like one small bed, it's no big deal. But you know, we're out here covering and uncovering a lot of beds. So it helps to have something to put your snap clamps in. So I don't know what's going on here, but we will then anchor down at the bottom the remay on every hoop. And then we'll also put them on the tops, like so, okay? And if you're short on snap clamps, you can get away with doing every other one on the top, but in an ideal world, you would put 3 snap clamps per hoop. You might as well go ahead and invest in it and do it right. The other thing that you'll see us do is this is where we will use those staples. So we've got a staple holding that down. And Emily, if you would hand me a staple. Thanks. And so we're then just going to anchor and tuck that all in, because this is our west side. And we want to make sure that there's no wind pouring down the hoop tunnel. If we have to compromise and we can't tuck in both ends, we'll pull extra remay down this side to keep the wind from going down the tunnel. And we'll leave the east side open because the wind doesn't come from the east. Generally speaking, like 90% of the time, it's going to be coming pouring this way. So we tuck it all in this way. And so, Felipe, yeah, if you'll just anchor that one. Super. So Philippe's just going to go down and he's going to put these snap clamps at every hoop. In an ideal world, you want this remay touching, especially the north side, but even the south side, okay? And ideally you want it clamped in such a way that this remay, there's two things that you're trying to do. One, you don't want this so taut, you actually want a little bit of slack, because otherwise if it's really, really super taut, the wind actually can pop the snap clamps off. And so a little bit of slack is actually good, so it kind of luffs a little bit. Too much tension actually causes the snap clamps to pop off, especially with the plastic. So you do want a little bit of slack. You also, though, you want to figure out a way to make sure that there's not too much slack, because what can happen is this can luff. And if you don't have enough vegetation here, if you just have bare soil here, it can erode the bed, just like pounding on it in the wind. So I also will sometimes readjust a little bit and then make sure that I've got that nice and tight at the base. It's like, this is good to have a little bit of slack here, but I want to make sure that there's not too much slack here that it's going to be pounding on the side of the bed. Okay. And so at this point, we would then, so when do you put plastic on? The remake can get you through, and for a lot of folks, depending on your microclimate, like if you're in a neighborhood, you might be able to get away with just remay. Like if you're not in a really exposed area, the remay may be enough for you, because it does protect down to like 20 degrees. And I've definitely had situations where I didn't have enough plastic one winter, and I've had, you know, crops with just the remay and they managed just fine. The plastic is bonus, especially like in times of snow or when we have prolonged cold temperatures, which, you know, it just depends here. You know, some years we have really mild winters and some years we have some pretty brutal winters. But the plastic is when your day and nighttime temperatures stay really low. And so I don't need to put the plastic on yet. You can see we only have remay on the beds right now. I probably won't put the plastic on until right around winter solstice. We'll see how December goes, but pretty consistently we tend to have like 45 and 50 degree days now in December. So I really just need this to be on to protect from the nighttime temperatures. The other great thing is that while the remay will warm up the soil and warm up the plants even in the daytime, because it'll trap some of the heat in there, it won't overheat the plants. Once I put on plastic, I have to be down here to make sure that I vent and open up the beds, because once you put on the greenhouse plastic, it can get like the Florida Everglades down in these beds. Like it gets humid and hot. So you have to pay attention to the temperatures. And so you want to put the plastic on, you know, if it's going to freeze, but if you're going to see a day that's like 45, 50 degrees in temperature and sunny, you better get down here and open up the plastic. And again, you don't have to like totally open up the beds all the way, but you're going to need to vent. And so what I'll usually do is come and roll up the sides and just put the snap clamp on so that the air can go and not overheat. Here's the other thing though too, is that you want your plants to get rain and sun. So you don't want to leave them covered too long if you want them to keep growing. It's chilly. Trying to keep warm out here. So so if you know that you're going to have like a number of days of good sun and maybe even a good day of rain, you might open the beds all the way up, but then be prepared to shut them back down at the end of that day if you see some cold temperatures. So in the wintertime, you're really not having to worry too much about watering. You're not having to worry about weeding. You're not having to worry about bugs or disease or fungus. It's awesome. But you are out here opening and closing these hoop tunnels depending on the weather. So it's just that is the work of winter gardening, is basically just maintaining the temperature and moisture in here and eating. You just get to come out here and harvest stuff. So I'm not going to put the plastic on here because it's just identical to putting the remay on. So what we would do is we would spread the remay on, and I would not use doubled snap clamps. I would just take the snap clamps off the remay and then put the snap clamps on the remay and the plastic simultaneously. So what I would do is take all of the snap clamps off except for the two on the end to just hold it in place, pull the plastic over, take this off, put it on top, and then put all the snap clamps back on. Is that clear? Let's pause for a moment to make sure that makes sense to everybody. Okay.
I'm not seeing any raised hands right now, Dana, but and you answered my main question, which was whether the remay alone could overheat the bed.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's the beautiful thing is like we've got warm days coming up and cold nights. So the remay is kind of a nice compromise. Like I can just put it on and walk away and know that the plants are going to be protected, but they're not going to overheat in these days where we're having like 26 to 60 or 36 to 50, you know, like it's fine. You can just leave them and walk away, which is so nice. Yeah.
Great.
All right, so we're going to show you how to put the rope on. Go ahead. Did you have something, Jay?
Yeah, I was going to ask whether it's important to put the plastic on before the sun sets for the day. Are you trying to capture some heat with the plastic on, or does it matter if you do that after dark?
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. I usually do it before dark because I've got so many to cover, and I am relying on volunteers, and it's cold. So, but I think, you know, if you are, you know, this is your home garden and you work a 9-to-5 job or you're out of the house or something, so long as you cover before, you know, the cold temperatures hit, it's totally fine. You know, it's a matter of do what works for you. In an optimal world though, yeah, I think that would be great if you covered, you know, maybe at 4 o'clock or something and captured some of that heat. You have to be careful because you don't want to overheat the plants, because what happens is then you invite fungus and insects, because it gets so warm under these hoop tunnels that you get disease and you get insect predation because of the hot temperatures. Yeah, so you don't want to cover too early in the day, but I could see covering at like 4 o'clock in the winter would be absolutely fine. And that's generally when we try to capture it, because we're trying to leave the beds open as long as possible.
Great.
To capture the sun.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see that Peter has his hand raised. Peter, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah. So do you ever use these water jugs to capture warmth, or use candles?
I have not. And again, you can see on what an enormous scale I'm growing on. So because I've got like 4,000 square feet behind me, of which we've got about 3,000 in production. I could see how, you know, if I did save up enough milk jugs and put water in them, and if there was enough sun shining on them, yeah, I could see how that could help. And I definitely have
garden, so I don't have your gardening. So
say that again.
I don't have the extent of your garden, so I just have some small, you know, raised beds. So I put some water jugs because it was suggested online. So
yeah, I can see how that would help build some microclimates, and that could be beneficial for sure. I definitely know, you know, in the springtime, I have gardeners here in the community garden that use those walls of water. You know, they're like that you can put around a plant, and that can really help to insulate. You know, if you've put tomatoes or peppers in the ground early, it definitely works. So water can be a great insulator, and can definitely, like I see it used in greenhouses all the time for building up, you know, building up heat, especially if they're painted black, and then they really absorb that water. So yeah, on a home scale, I can see how that could provide some microclimate and some benefit. It'd be cool to play with for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. All right, we're gonna time check. Awesome, perfect. We are at 4:45. We're gonna show you how to put this rope on, and then take any extra questions, and we'll be finishing up right on time. Super. All right.
I was asking if you mentioned if remay allows at least some rain in mitigating the risk of the ground drying out.
It does, yeah. Remay will allow some moisture through and sunlight. So you could get away. You won't get a deep soak as if you opened it up entirely, but it does allow for moisture in, and it also helps to trap and hold some of the moisture, right? Because it's preventing the wind from drying out the soil. So it does a pretty good job of maintaining some soil moisture and also allowing some of that moisture through when it does rain. All right, so your first stake, I really love using these sticks because they have holes in them and they have these side teeth, which you're going to see work great here in just a moment. So what I usually do is take the end of my rope and tie a knot in it, you know, pass it through the hole and tie a knot in it. And then that goes in the front, in the corner here.
What do you call these snakes?
The
Is there a
stakes.
specific-
Yeah,
that was just a question.
yeah, tents. I don't know. They came from Home Depot.
Okay.
So then my first bit goes across. And so Philippe, if you'll go down the other side, you'll want about every other one. You're gonna need probably 6 or 7 stakes. All right, so he's gonna go down that side. It's helpful to have a partner if you've got a big, our beds are 50 feet long and 4 feet wide. So this is where the teeth come in handy. You're gonna feed that through. So see how that slides? And I'm gonna put that in the ground, ideally more in the wood chips, because our beds are double dug, so the soil's really, really soft. So I wanted to get some purchase, so I'm gonna put it in the wood chips, because otherwise, if you just put it in soft, double dug ground, the wind here can really even just fly these stakes out as well. So now we're gonna zigzag this rope back and forth. Sorry about that, Snapdragon. All right. And so Philippe, you're gonna put a stake in the ground at that height, at this hoop, and you're gonna feed your rope through the teeth. Yep, just like through one side, just one of the sides, not both, and then push that stake all the way into the ground till it's flush with the ground. Yep. And see how much tension we have here? You're looking to have a little bit of tension. You're not trying to crank it down, but it's definitely holding it. And then he's gonna pass the rope back to me. Same thing, I'm gonna take another stake, put it through a bite in the rope, and push it in right at the hoop, like so. Okay. I pass the rope back across on the diagonal. So you're going basically back and forth every other, zigzagging across. So right here, you're gonna put a stake in. And this is a 100-foot rope. It's plenty long. It will have some extra at the end for this 50-foot bed. Oh, I need, hey, Emily, can I get you to get me some more stakes? Thanks. Thanks. Thank you.
Does a cold weather crop like spinach need as much protection?
So all of these are cold weather crops. The question was, is a cold weather crop like spinach need as much protection? All of these are cold weather crops, and you could experiment. Like if you just have a little bit of space at your house, like I know these are big beds and not every home gardener is gonna have this much in production. You can definitely just get like 2 of these. You might be able to buy them singly, and just a little piece of scrap remay or whatever, and still cover. The thing is like, I've definitely seen collards make it out here until Christmas time uncovered. So depending on the health and the vitality of the plant, depending on the microclimate where your garden happens to be, and by microclimate, I mean that like every place out here in the garden is affected by like the slope of the land, even in this relatively flat place, the way the sun hits it, at what time of day, so many factors. You know, whether you've got a stone wall nearby, there's just so many things that can affect the microclimate. So by like, we've got a climate here where you can say, oh, in Black Mountain today it's 72 degrees, but in your spot, in your yard, it might actually be 76 or it might actually be 62. You know, just that probably not that much fluctuation, but you get the idea that that's what I mean by a microclimate, is that in, you know, 150 square foot or 100 square foot area, there can be changes in the way the sun hits, the temperature, the airflow, so many things that affect whether or not a plant can survive unprotected. So this just gives you some increased guarantees, so to speak, that you'll be able to have vegetables at Christmas time in the ground. And also it provides you some certainty that you'll be able to, like, you could probably grow vegetables all the way up till Christmas and not cover, and be able to, like, you know, serve your collards at Thanksgiving and maybe even serve some collards at Christmas time if you had enough. What won't happen though is that these will not make it through January and February. So what we're really ensuring is that we are protecting these plants so that we know that we're still going to be harvesting come February and March, because right, there's always that gap. You know, it takes you sometimes until May to start to eat the crops that you plant when you can start to plant in spring and March. So this gives us that, like, that buffer of all the work we do now. If all goes well, will provide us. Not all of this is going to make it. We're going to definitely have some loss. We do every year. But generally speaking, we'll get anywhere from 50 to 75% of these greens still producing next spring before we get the next round in the ground and ready to harvest. So hopefully that kind of helps answer that in the big picture. All right, so then your last one goes across kind of the same way we started. Thanks. And then I'll usually take it through the second bite as well. You can see that. And that'll hold the tension, and then I just coil it neatly. And here's the thing is that as the rain comes and whatnot, and these ropes get wet, you'll have to come back through and pick up the slack, because what will happen is the rope will stretch. And so I find that usually after like the first rain or the first snow or whatever, the rope won't be holding the bed as taut. And so I'll just come through. And the beautiful thing is that because, as you saw, the rope slides through those teeth, I just start at one end and I just pick up the slack, pull it all the way out at the end and coil the rope. And then here's the other cool thing. You don't have to take off this rope. If you do use rope in your system, you do not have to take off this rope the rest of the winter. It stays in place. And so what you do when you want to open up is then you come through and you take these snap clamps and you pop them off, and this whole system slides under the ropes. And what's really cool is that when you open it up, then the ropes also help to hold the reame and the plastic in place. So they just kind of hold the whole thing nice and snug and tight, so it's not blowing around in the wind. Okay. So that kind of gives you the whole picture from start to finish of how to build one of these and use it. Any questions at this point? Great. I'm ready. Go ahead.
I had a quick one. We've just got some like 8 by 10 raised beds in our backyard. Would you need to do the roping for something that small?
Probably not. Go ahead and give it a try this winter. See how you do with just snap clamps and reame, and know that this rope is a great option for a small system like that if you do need it. Okay. Yeah, a lot of this, I've been doing this every winter now since 2005. I learned from Dr. Wilson, who learned from Elliot Coleman. If you want to learn more about 4-season gardening, Elliot Coleman's books, Coleman, are really, really great. He's got the 4-season gardener, and he's got one other one, and they're beautifully written. There's so much fantastic information in them, and Dr. Wilson learned from him. And if you don't know who Dr. Wilson is, he started this garden when he was in his 80s, and he lived to be almost 100 years old. He passed away a few years ago. And so I learned winter gardening from Dr. Wilson, and I've improved on his knowledge and the things that he taught me after lots of trial and error out here over the years. So the rope is an essential part of our system, but you may not need it.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have a question from Peter.
Okay.
When is the latest you can plant seeds, out in the garden rather than,
Yeah.
indoors? I mean, because
Yeah.
right now things are really small. Things we planted maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago are still struggling a bit.
Yeah. So if you can cover those, Peter, what will happen if all goes well, I've seen it happen here and it's pretty cool, is those seedlings just stay so tiny all winter long. And then February 2nd comes around and the light comes back, right? February 2nd is sort of that, like, it's the halfway point between the solstice and the equinox. And so the light really begins to return. And those teeny tiny seedlings will just jump, like they will just grow so fast. It's amazing. So it really is worth protecting and covering them. Even if you can't eat them now, you will get to.
Okay.
And then the other thing, just to directly answer that question of like, what's the latest you can plant seeds? Well, you can sow seeds at any time, but when they germinate is another story. So studying, Dr. Wilson used to have this great book. He didn't pass it down to me. He's passed a lot of books down that I don't know what became of this one, but I'm wondering, I bet you can find this information on the internet. But every seed has its germination temperature window. So for example, corn won't germinate until the soil temperatures are at least 72 to 75 degrees. Lettuce will not germinate when soil temperatures are above 72 degrees. They need a window between 55 and 72 degrees. So basically, you're starting to reach that window now where the soil temperatures are going to get cold and nothing's going to germinate. We're pretty much like rye is about the only thing that might germinate right now, because it will germinate in pretty cold temperatures. I think even down to like 45 maybe. I don't have that one memorized, but most everything at this point, you've missed that window for germination. However, seeds are cheap and it's always worth experimenting, to just like broadcast a small patch down and see what you get. You might get enough germination that it kind of holds on through the winter. And then again, like I said, picks up, but you're not going to get a whole lot of growth right now until the sun begins to return.
Is it worth taking soil temperatures?
Yeah, you definitely can get yourself a soil thermometer, and you can probably even trick and manipulate the system by putting that UV grade plastic down and warming up the soil and sowing those seeds and
Sort of
attempting
creating
to get them to grow.
creating your own greenhouse.
Exactly. Yeah, and
This
it's
has
so
been
fun to
very helpful.
experiment with that. Yeah, I mean, just this is where keeping a journal, keeping records is so important. So you want to, like, what was the soil temperature? What was the seed? Where did the seed come from? All of those things. What was the moon cycle? Because if you want to get good germination or increase your options, your potential for germination, you want to look at how many days it takes for that seed to germinate. Like say lettuce takes 7 to 14, I think, is lettuce. So you count back from the full moon, and that's when your planting window is. So if it's let's just say lettuce is 7 days, then you count 7 days back from the full moon, and you plant sort of 3 days in that window of 7 days back.
Right.
Because you want the seed to be bursting with the moon filling up and becoming full.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We had time.
I don't know if you want to do any more questions or if
Are there any more questions? Because I mean,
it doesn't look like there's any more.
Okay, we're at 4:59.
Yep.
So, y'all, thanks so much for joining us on this call. Happy winter gardening! I'm so excited for you to get to grow vegetables. It is such a joy to winter garden. I mean, most of the time. sometimes it's harsh, but it's always worth it to have those fresh vegetables on your table. So, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.